Let me give you guys a look at what actually is going on behind the scenes right now. So there's reporting that we have that indicates that the U.S. is debating whether or not to just like help Israel logistically with their next attack on Iran, or to actually partake in the war against Iran. So let me walk you through this. After Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel last week, U.S. military officials discussed options for joining Israel in its retaliation against Iran, according to two U.S. officials familiar with the discussions. The U.S. has long supported Israel with intelligence, and that support could continue during Israel's retaliatory strikes. Look at the framing. Retaliatory strikes. No, Iran's attacks were retaliatory. The two officials said senior U.S. military officials have also discussed conducting very limited strikes. Again, look at the language. For us, it's just a little incursion into Lebanon, not an invasion. It's an incursion. It's very limited strikes against Iranian targets, the two officials said. Strikes inside Iran have been discussed, as have strikes on targets outside Iran. Those strikes of any kind are less likely than intelligence sharing, the official said. The U.S. could target Iranian assets at sea, the official said, or try to disrupt Iran's military assistance to proxies in the region by hitting Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sites that support militia groups in Yemen or Syria. A U.S. strike on an Iranian target could be considered defensive if it eliminates a possible threat to the U.S. or allies, like previous American strikes on Iran-linked targets inside Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. So what they're saying is, for when Israel strikes Iran again, are we just going to provide logistical and intelligence support, or are we going to join them in attacking Iran, and then are we going to turn around to the American public and lie about it and say, oh, bro, we were just being defensive. They were going to launch an imminent attack against us, bro. That's the discussion that they're having. That's the discussion that they're having. Now, we'll get to the substance of it in a second, but just real quick on a process point, this is wildly unconstitutional, wildly illegal. It violates both the U.S. Constitution and the War Powers Act. Congress would have to declare war before we could ever directly strike Iran. But they don't care. When Trump was considering directly striking Iran, all the Democrats, they were weaselly and mealy-mouthed, and they made the argument of, you need to come to Congress first, sir. No war on Iran unless you get it approved by Congress. I don't like that general process criticism because it avoids the issue as such, which is, don't go to war with Iran. It hides behind process bullshit. But even so, it is legally correct to say, you can't just do this. This is not a thing. So U.S. officials are considering both participating in Israeli attacks on Iran in violation of War Powers Resolution, but also direct U.S. strikes against Iran. Unnamed U.S. officials apparently want U.S. war on Iran, but without the debate and vote required by the Constitution. By the way, what targets are they discussing? Well, they've said it publicly. Israel said it publicly. They want to attack Iranian oil sites, which could be devastating for their economy and devastating for the global economy in a certain sense, right? And also their nuclear sites. Even though they're nuclear sites, they have every right under international law to enrich uranium to the point of power for their power grid or scientific research. They have every right under international law to do that. That's what those nuclear sites are for. The U.S. and Israel still may attack those nuclear sites. Now, by the way, if they do that, what happens afterwards? We'll tell you what happens afterwards. We know. Iran has been saying, if you attack our assets, we will attack your assets. If you attack our assets, U.S. oil sites in the region, consider them gone. We're going to bomb them to smithereens. Your bases, we're going to bomb them to smithereens. This is what they're saying. So is this worth it? Is all of this worth it? And for what? Because Israel's doing a genocide in Gaza, and you have this group of countries and groups that are resisting that, whether it be the Houthis in Yemen or Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Iran is funding those groups, right? And, every step of the way, it's been very clear, if the U.S. stops arming and funding Israel, and Israel stops doing a genocide in Gaza, the missiles from Hezbollah stop on day one, and we already know the missiles from the Houthis would stop, because when they had a temporary pause in the fighting, the Houthis were like, all right, no more missiles, and no more seizing ships that are going to trade with Israel. This is not rocket science. This is not rocket science. So Joe Biden is willing to go to war with Iran illegally in order to allow Netanyahu to continue to carpet bomb innocent civilians on a daily basis. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. And again, I want to reiterate, don't buy this argument of like, oh, feckless Joe Biden, weak Joe Biden, he's trying to reel Bibi in, but he can't, bro. No, because again, he could reel him in today if he cut off the money and the weapons and said, you're done here. It'd be over. There's nothing Bibi can do in that scenario. Maybe he could go for another month or so with an orgy of violence, but eventually the weapons run out, right? So really, they're complicit. Really, behind the scenes, it's winking and on, and they agree, right? We already discussed the story last week about how Anthony Blinken approved the attacks on humanitarian trucks and food workers. Behind the scenes, they were greenlighting that. So in front of the public, it's, oh man, we don't agree with everything they're doing, and they're going a little too far, and we've said protect civilians. But then behind the scenes, they're like, look, whatever you want to do, you do. I mean, think about that, bro. That's devastating. Now, at the same time this is going on, right? You have Donald Trump campaigning on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are too soft on Palestinians and too hard on Israel. He said insane things like we should deport pro-Palestine protesters. He's taken $100 million from Miriam Adelson on the condition that he allows Israel to annex the entire West Bank, right? He's saying you're not letting them, quote unquote, finish the job, and you need to let them finish the job. So the Trump perspective is, let's give more money, let's give more weapons, and let's just greenlight Israel creating a greater Israel and occupying more territory illegally. That's the Trump position. The Biden position is exactly what's going on right now. And then you might, well, hey man, hopefully Kamala will be better. Hopefully Kamala will be different on this. Well, she just went on 60 Minutes, and in the overtime segment for 60 Minutes, she was asked which foreign country she considers to be the U.S.'s, quote, greatest adversary. Now, right off the bat, by the way, I don't like that question. I don't like that question. I think that question is pretty fucking stupid. But putting that aside, her answer was, quote, I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands. So at the same time, behind the scenes, the U.S. and Israel are plotting offensive strikes on Iran. Offensive. Don't get it twisted. She's providing intellectual cover for that in her interviews. And also, like, you're running for president. Do you think this dead neocon ideology is what people are yearning for? You think average voters are out there like, sure, I sure would like a larger war with Iran? No. And also, don't forget the way the events unfolded. The way the events unfolded, Israel attacked Iran first. They bombed in Tehran. They killed the top negotiator in Hamas of the political wing who was working on a deal with Israel. By the way, it really shows you're interested in peace when you kill the top person who's negotiating with you for a peace deal, right? So they did that to Iran first. They're on the offense. They're aggressive. Benjamin Netanyahu has been yearning for this war all along. And it looks like they're going to give it to him. So to reiterate, Trump, forget it. I mean, he's greenlighting absolutely everything and saying that Israel should go further. Biden has brought us to the status quo point where we're on the brink of directly striking Iran for Israel, dragging in U.S. troops, right? And Kamala has shown no indication of any pushback whatsoever either. So conventional wisdom, the status quo, will move along unimpeded. That looks to me like a bit of a worst case scenario. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.